She had been married 7 times, 7 husbands, and every one of them had died on their wedding night. Before the marriage was consummated, before the morning came, found dead in the bridal chamber, with no visible cause, no wound, no illness, just dead. By the time the 8th suitor arrived, Sarah's own maid was mocking her. "You are the one who kills your husbands. You have already had 7 of them. Why should you get another?" Sarah went up to her room to hang herself, and then she stopped, because she thought about her father. If she killed herself, the grief would destroy him. She would not do that to him. Instead, she turned to the window and prayed. At that same moment, in the city of Nineveh, hundreds of miles away, a blind old man named Tobit lay on his bed praying for death. He had lost his sight. He had lost his wealth. He had lost the respect of his community. He could bear no more. 2 prayers, prayed simultaneously by 2 desperate, suffering, righteous people who had no idea the other existed. And God heard both prayers at the same moment. And he sent one angel to answer both, the archangel Raphael, sent to heal Tobit's blindness and to free Sarah from the demon that was killing her husbands, and to bring these 2 families together through a marriage that no demon could prevent and no suffering could destroy. But what no one knew was the warning hidden in this ancient love story. A warning about spiritual warfare that is as urgent today as it was when the story was first told. About the specific ways the enemy targets marriages and families. About the specific weapons God has placed in our hands to fight back. And about the angelic protection that surrounds the people of God in ways they cannot see but cannot deny. Welcome to Journey Bible Stories. Subscribe right now. This is the Book of Tobit, the hidden love story with angels and demons, and what it reveals about the invisible war being fought over your family will change how you pray forever. Let's begin. The Book of Tobit is one of the most significant texts in the debate about the biblical canon, and its status, included by some traditions, excluded by others, makes it one of the most important cases for understanding how the canon was formed. The Book of Tobit is included in the Catholic Bible, specifically in the deuterocanonical books, the books accepted by the Council of Trent in 1546 as fully canonical. It is included in the Eastern Orthodox Bible. It is read as scripture by Catholic and Orthodox Christians worldwide, representing approximately 1.5 billion people. It is excluded from the Protestant Bible. Martin Luther, in the 16th century, removed the deuterocanonical books from the Protestant canon, placing them in an appendix labeled the Apocrypha. The Protestant tradition has generally treated them as valuable for edification, but not authoritative for doctrine. But what no one knew was the most significant piece of modern evidence that has transformed the scholarly debate about Tobit's antiquity: the Dead Sea Scrolls. Among the Qumran Library, discovered 1947, archaeologists found 4 fragments of Tobit in Aramaic and 1 fragment in Hebrew. 5 separate manuscripts, dating to approximately 100 BC. This established beyond question that the Book of Tobit was an ancient Jewish text, circulating in Aramaic and Hebrew in the Second Temple period. Not a later Greek composition, as some Protestant scholars had argued. Tobit was ancient. Tobit was Jewish. Tobit was read by the same community that preserved the biblical prophets and the Book of Enoch. Its antiquity, confirmed by the Qumran fragments, is not in dispute. The question is not whether Tobit is ancient. The question is whether it is authoritative scripture. And on that question, the Christian traditions have divided, with the Catholic and Orthodox traditions saying yes, and the Protestant tradition saying valuable but not canonical. To understand the Book of Tobit, you need to understand its world, because the story is set in one of the most historically specific and theologically significant contexts in the entire ancient Jewish literature. Tobit 1:1-3. Tobit is a Naphthalite from the tribe of Naphtali in northern Israel. He was taken into captivity by the Assyrian king Shalmaneser when the northern kingdom fell, the Assyrian conquest of 722 BC. He's living in Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire that conquered his homeland. This is not a fictional backdrop. The Assyrian conquest of the northern kingdom is one of the most documented events in the history of the ancient Near East. The exile of the northern tribes, the 10 tribes scattered by Assyria, is a historical reality confirmed by both the biblical text and extensive archaeological evidence. Tobit, in the diaspora in Nineveh, is doing what the Jewish people have always done in exile. He is maintaining his identity, his dietary laws, his burial practices, his prayer, his faith in the God of Israel, even when that God seems to have abandoned him. Tobit 1:16-20. Tobit buries the bodies of his fellow Jews who have been executed by the Assyrian king Sennacherib. This is an act of tremendous courage and tremendous risk. Sennacherib has forbidden Jewish burial practices, and when Tobit is reported to the king, he flees. His property is confiscated. He becomes a refugee in his own diaspora community. But what no one knew was the specific theological statement that Tobit's burial practice makes. In the ancient world, leaving bodies unburied was considered one of the gravest possible desecrations. The refusal to bury the dead was a weapon used by conquerors to humiliate their enemies and to deprive the dead of whatever dignity death allowed. Tobit, at personal risk, at cost to his own family, insists on burying the dead of his community. He will not allow the conqueror to have the final word over Jewish bodies. He will not allow the empire to extend its power beyond death. The man who cannot see in the last chapters of the story was a man who saw clearly all along. He saw what mattered. He saw what was worth the cost. And what was worth the cost was the dignity of the people of God, even in death. Tobit 2:9-14. The event that triggers the entire narrative. Tobit has returned from burying a dead Jewish man. He washes himself, because contact with the dead made one ritually unclean in Jewish law. He lies down beside the wall of his courtyard, and sparrow droppings fall into his eyes from a nest in the wall above him. He goes blind. He seeks medical treatment. The physicians cannot help. The blindness is complete and permanent. And then, his wife Anna begins to work to support the family. She's hired as a weaver, and one of her employers gives her a goat as a bonus payment. Tobit hears the goat bleeding. He is suspicious. He tells Anna, "Return the goat. It might be stolen." Anna is furious. She says, "Where are your acts of charity now? Where has your righteousness gotten you?" The righteous man, blind, doubting his wife's honesty, being mocked by the person closest to him. This is the man who had risked his life and his property to bury the dead of his community. This is the reward. Tobit's response, Tobit 3:1-6. He prays for death. "O Lord, I am not being punished for any sin that I have committed or for any error. Command that I be released from this earth so that I may hear no more reproaches." He asks to die, not in rebellion, in exhaustion. He has done everything right. He has maintained his faith. He has kept the law. He has done the righteous acts at personal cost. And everything has gone wrong anyway. But what no one knew was what Tobit's prayer and Sarah's prayer, prayed simultaneously at the beginning of the book, reveal about the nature of righteous suffering. Both are praying from the place of deepest pain. Both are asking for relief that seems impossible. Both are righteous people who have done nothing to deserve their situation. And both are praying to the same God, who is already, at the moment they pray, setting in motion the answer to both prayers simultaneously. The answer to suffering is rarely immediate. But the Tobit narrative insists, with the confidence of ancient faith, that the God who hears prayer is already acting before the prayer reaches its conclusion. Tobit 3:7-15. Simultaneously with Tobit's prayer in Nineveh, in the city of Ecbatana in Media, a young woman named Sarah is in her own crisis. Sarah is the daughter of Raguel and Edna, distant relatives of Tobit's family. She has been married 7 times, and every husband has died on the wedding night before the marriage was consummated. The cause, Tobit 3:8, is a demon named Asmodeus. The evil spirit Asmodeus was in love with her and would kill any man who wanted to be her husband before he could be with her as his wife. Asmodeus, one of the most specifically named demons in all of ancient Jewish literature. The name appears to derive from the Avestan Ashma Diva, the demon of wrath and lust in ancient Persian religious tradition. In Jewish demonology, Asmodeus became associated specifically with the corruption of marriage and sexuality, a demon whose specific assignment is the destruction of marriage, whose strategy is to prevent the consummation of the covenant relationship between husband and wife, whose weapon is death, killing every man who approaches Sarah before the marriage can be established. But what no one knew was the specific theological statement this makes about the enemy's strategy against marriage. The enemy does not simply attack marriages that exist. He attacks marriages before they can begin. He targets the moment of covenant commitment, the wedding night, the consummation, the irreversible joining, and he disrupts it. The 7 husbands of Sarah, killed by Asmodeus before the morning came. The demon's strategy is timing, prevention. He acts at the critical moment when the covenant is being established. And what does this say about the spiritual warfare around marriage in the present age? The enemy attacks marriages before they begin, through pornography that corrupts sexual desire before it can be properly directed, through hookup culture that separates physical intimacy from covenant commitment, through divorce culture that normalizes the ending of marriage before it has reached its depth. Asmodeus is ancient. His strategy is not. Tobit 3:16-17. Both prayers, Tobit's and Sarah's, are heard simultaneously by God, and God sends a single response to both. The archangel Raphael, sent to heal Tobit's white films from his eyes so that he might see God's light with his own eyes, and sent to give Sarah, daughter of Raguel, as a wife for Tobias, the son of Tobit, and to bind the demon Asmodeus. 1 angel, 2 assignments, 3 people whose lives will be transformed by his mission. And he does all of it in disguise. Tobit 5:4-12. Tobias, Tobit's son, goes looking for a traveling companion for the journey to Media, where Tobit's money has been stored. He meets a man who says his name is Azariah, son of Ananias, a kinsman. He's willing to travel. He knows the road. He can guide Tobias safely. Tobias hires him, brings him to meet Tobit. And Tobit asks Azariah, "What family do you belong to, and from what tribe?" The angel answers with a specific, detailed, entirely fabricated human genealogy. He describes relatives and family connections that establish him as a trusted community member. he maintains his disguise completely. Raphael, one of the 7 archangels who stand before the throne of God, as he will identify himself at the end of the story, is traveling as a human being, eating with humans, sleeping when the humans sleep, navigating the roads as a human navigator. But what no one knew was the specific canonical echo this creates. Hebrews 13:2. Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unawares. Angels unawares. Hebrews 13:2 is almost certainly drawing on the Tobit tradition. The archangel Raphael, traveling in disguise, accepted as a trustworthy human companion, whose true identity is unknown until the moment of revelation, is the paradigmatic case of entertaining an angel without knowing it. The warning of Hebrews 13:2 is not hypothetical. It is grounded in a specific, well-known story. The story of a young man who hired a traveling companion and did not know he was hiring an archangel. Tobit 6:119. Tobias and Raphael, disguised as Azariah, are traveling. They stop at the river Tigris for the night. Tobias goes to wash his feet in the river, and a large fish leaps out of the water and tries to swallow his foot. Tobias cries out in alarm, and Raphael tells him, "Catch the fish, don't let it go." Tobias catches the fish, and Raphael tells him to take the gall, the heart, and the liver. Keep them. They are useful for medicine. At that moment, traveling toward a demon Tobias does not yet know exists, accompanied by an angel he does not yet know is an angel. God provides the weapon that will defeat Asmodeus, in the form of a fish, the most ordinary thing in the world, leaping out of a river onto a young man's feet. The heart of the fish burned on coals, Raphael explains later, produces a smoke that drives away demons. Specifically, the smoke of the burning fish heart drives away the demon Asmodeus. He will flee to Egypt and be bound there by the angel. But what no one knew was the specific theological statement this fish represents. God prepares the weapons of spiritual warfare before the battle begins. Before Tobias knows about Asmodeus, before he knows about Sarah, before he understands what he is walking into, the provision for defeating the enemy is already in his hands. The fish was always in the river. The river was always on the root. The root was the one the angel chose. And the angel chose it because God sent him. Every link in the chain was deliberate. Every apparently random event, a fish leaping at a young man's feet, was part of a preparation that preceded the battle by years. This is the theology of divine providence that runs through the entire Book of Tobit. God is not reactive. He's not scrambling to respond to the enemy's attacks. He prepared the weapon before the attack was launched. He placed it in the river before Tobias arrived. He arranged the route before the journey began. The fish was always there, waiting for the man who needed it. Tobit 6:10-18. As they approach Ecbatana, Raphael tells Tobias about Sarah. He tells him, "Tonight we will stay with Raguel, who is your kinsman. He has a daughter named Sarah. No man has a right to her inheritance but you, since you are next of kin. She is sensible, brave, and very beautiful. Her father is a good man." Tobias is interested, but he has heard about the 7 husbands. He says to Raphael, "I have heard that the young woman has already been given to 7 husbands, and that they all died in the bridal chamber. I'm afraid that I might die and bring my father's and mother's lives down to their graves in grief over me, for they have no other son to bury them." Legitimate fear. 7 men had died in this room. The fear is not cowardice. It is rational. 7 data points, all pointing to the same conclusion. This room is where young men go to die. But Raphael says, do not be afraid. She was set apart for you before the world was made. Before the world was made. This is one of the most extraordinary statements in the entire Book of Tobit. Sarah was set apart for Tobias before the world was created. The marriage that the demon has been trying to prevent for 7 previous attempts was ordained in eternity. Not incidentally, specifically, deliberately, before the world was made. The enemy has been fighting against a marriage that God decreed before creation. He has won 7 temporary victories, 7 dead husbands, 7 nights of apparent triumph. And he has accomplished precisely nothing. The marriage he has been trying to prevent is still going to happen, because it was always going to happen. But what no one knew was the most urgent personal application of this declaration. Before the world was made, the relationships God has ordained for your life, the purposes he has written in the heavenly tablets, are not contingent on the enemy's opposition. They are not prevented by his temporary victories. They are not derailed by his strategy of delay and destruction. What God has decreed before the world was made, the enemy cannot ultimately prevent. He can delay. He can make the road harder. He can kill 7 men before the 8th arrives. But the 8th will arrive, because the marriage was always going to happen. Tobit 8:1-9. The most important scene in the entire Book of Tobit, and the scene that contains the most urgent practical instruction for every married couple in the 21st century. Tobias has married Sarah. They have entered the bridal chamber. 7 men died here before reaching this moment. The demon Asmodeus is present, or has been present in every previous night. The threat is real, and Tobias does something that none of the 7 previous husbands apparently did. He burns the heart and liver of the fish. The smoke fills the chamber. Asmodeus flees to Egypt, to the uttermost parts of the earth, and the angel Raphael binds him there. But then, before anything else, Tobias prays. Tobit 8:8. Blessed are you, O God of our ancestors, and blessed is your name in all generations forever. Let the heavens and the whole creation bless you forever. You made Adam, and you made his wife Eve as a helper and support. From the 2 of them, the human race has come. You said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. Let us make a helper for him like himself." See, I am now taking this kinswoman of mine, not because of lust, but with sincerity. Grant that she and I may find mercy and grow old together. Not because of lust, but with sincerity. The prayer identifies the spirit in which the marriage is entered. Not possession, not appetite, not the ownership impulse that makes another person an object. Sincerity, the full, open, God-honoring recognition of what a marriage actually is. And Sarah adds her Amen. The prayer is the weapon. The smoke of the fish, the practical material weapon, drives the demon from the room. The prayer, the spiritual weapon, establishes the character of the marriage that follows. A marriage entered in prayer, not in lust. A marriage consecrated by the God who made Adam and Eve. A marriage oriented from its first moment toward the eternal. But what no one knew was the specific urgency of this scene for every married couple watching this video. The enemy targets the bedroom. He targets the intimacy. He targets the place where vulnerability is highest and where the covenant is either deepened or eroded. The weapon against him, as Tobias demonstrates, is not only practical but spiritual, not only material but covenantal. Prayer before intimacy. the consecration of the marriage bed to the God who made it. Tobit 8:9-20. Raguel, Sarah's father, has been through this 7 times before. He knows the pattern. He expects the pattern to repeat. He goes outside at dawn. He digs a grave for Tobias, just in case, so that if the young man is dead, he can be buried quickly and discreetly before the neighbors find out. And then, Raguel sends his wife Edna to check the bridal chamber. She opens the door. She looks in. She sees Tobias and Sarah, both alive, both sleeping, both breathing. She runs back. She tells Raguel he is alive. And Raguel, who had been digging a grave, prays the most joyful prayer in the entire book. Tobit 8:15-17. Blessed are you, O God, with every pure blessing. Let all your chosen ones bless you. Let all your angels and your chosen ones bless you forever. Blessed are you, because you have made me joyful. It has not turned out as I expected, but you have treated us according to your great mercy. Blessed are you, because you had compassion on 2 only children. It has not turned out as I expected. Raguel expected death. He dug a grave, and he found life. The father who expected to bury another son-in-law celebrated a wedding breakfast instead. But what no one knew was the specific theological statement this scene makes. Raguel had resigned himself to the pattern. 7 times, 7 deaths. He no longer expected anything different. He was going through the motions, performing the wedding, expecting the tragedy. And God broke the pattern. Completely. In the one night that none of the previous 7 nights had produced. The pattern the enemy has established in your life, the repeated failure, the repeated defeat, the repeatedly dug grave, is not the final word. The grave Raguel dug is still empty, because the morning came differently than he expected. What has God not told you to stop expecting? Tobit 11:7-15, the journey home. Tobias has the fish gall, the other piece of the fish that Raphael told him to keep. And Raphael tells him, as soon as you enter the house, go to your father immediately. Apply the gall to his eyes. The white films will peel off, and your father will regain his sight and see the light. Tobias runs ahead into the house. He reaches his father. He applies the gall to Tobit's eyes. He waits. Tobit 11:13. And when his eyes began to smart, he rubbed them, and the white films scaled off from the corners of his eyes. Then he saw his son and threw his arms around him, and he wept and said, I can see you, my son, the light of my eyes. The blind man sees. The father sees his son's face for the first time since his blindness. He weeps. He says, I can see you, my son, the light of my eyes, the light of my eyes. Not simply, I can see again. I can see you. The first thing he sees after years of blindness is his son's face, the person he most wanted to see. The light he most wanted returned to him. And then Tobit sees Sarah, his new daughter-in-law. He blesses her. He weeps again. And he prays, blessing the God who heard both his prayer and Sarah's. But what no one knew was the specific connection between Tobit's healing and the healing ministry of Jesus in the canonical Gospels. Jesus opens blind eyes throughout the Gospels, and in each case the healing is not simply physical restoration. It is a sign, a demonstration of the kingdom breaking into the present world, of the God who always intended for the blind to see, acting in the person of his Son to make that intention visible. Tobit's healing, accomplished through the gall of a fish, is a foretaste, an ancient prefiguring of the healing that will come to all who have been blinded by suffering, by sin, by the accumulated darkness of a life lived east of Eden. The God who healed Tobit's eyes through the most ordinary instrument imaginable, a fish, is the same God who restored sight to Bartimaeus, who will one day wipe every tear from every eye, who will make all things new. Tobit 12:6-22. The most extraordinary moment in the entire Book of Tobit. The traveling companion who has been Azariah, the kinsman, the reliable guide, the practical advisor, unmasks himself. Tobias and Tobit want to pay him. They offer half of everything they have. He has guided Tobias safely. He arranged the marriage. He bound the demon. He healed Tobit's eyes. They feel they owe him everything. Raphael takes them aside. He says, "Bless God. Give him the praise and the glory. Before all the living, acknowledge the ways in which he has dealt with you. It is good to bless God and to exalt his name." And then, Raphael 12:15. I am Raphael, one of the 7 angels who stand ready and enter before the glory of the Lord. One of the 7. The archangels, the beings who stand before the throne of God and are sent into the world on divine missions. He has been with them the entire journey, traveling, eating, sleeping, giving advice. And every moment of the journey, the route chosen, the fish caught, the marriage arranged, the demon driven out, the eyes healed, was the work of this being who stood before the throne of God and was sent to answer 2 prayers prayed simultaneously in 2 different cities. Tobit and Tobias fall on their faces in terror. And Raphael says, "Do not be afraid. Peace be to you. Bless God forevermore." And then, Raphael 12:19. When I was with you, I was not acting on my own will, but by the will of God. Bless him each day, sing his praises. Not acting on my own will, by the will of God. The entire journey, every decision, every coincidence, every fish, every arranged meeting, every defeated demon was not Raphael's initiative. It was God's. The angel was the instrument. God was the author. But what no one knew was the most urgent personal application of Raphael's revelation. The guidance you have received, the doors that opened and the doors that closed, the people who appeared at the right moment and the dangers that were averted, may not all have been human coincidence. Some of it may have been angelic, administered by beings whose existence you did not suspect and whose mission you did not know, serving the God who sent them, answering prayers you prayed in 2 different cities at the same moment. The defeat of Asmodeus, the demon who had killed 7 husbands of Sarah, is one of the most theologically significant moments in the entire Book of Tobit. And what it reveals about spiritual warfare is urgently relevant. The demon was defeated by the smoke of the fish heart, burned on coals, in the bridal chamber, at the moment of the wedding night. The weapon was material, practical. God provided it in a river before Tobias knew he needed it. The angel instructed him to use it, and it worked. But the weapon worked within a context, the context of prayer, of entering the marriage with sincerity rather than lust, of consecrating the moment to God. The smoke drove the demon out. The prayer established the character of what followed. And then, Raphael bound Asmodeus in Egypt. The demon who had operated freely in the bridal chambers of Ecbatana was chased to the uttermost parts of the earth, Egypt, and bound there. Bound, not destroyed, bound. The demon Asmodeus, like the Watchers of Genesis 6, is not annihilated, but restrained, held, prevented from continuing his specific campaign against Sarah and Tobias. But what no one knew was the most urgent implication of the demon's binding for the present age. Asmodeus was bound in Egypt by Raphael. The specific demon attacking the specific marriage was bound by the angel sent to protect it. But other demons are not bound. Other attacks are not prevented. Other marriages are not automatically protected. The protection of the marriage, in the Tobit narrative, required specific action. The fish had to be caught and kept. The heart had to be burned. The prayer had to be prayed. The marriage had to be entered in the right spirit. The angel was there, but the human participants had to cooperate with the divine provision. This is the theology of spiritual warfare that runs through the entire New Testament. God provides the armor, Ephesians 6, but the believer must put it on. God provides the weapon, but the warrior must use it. The provision is divine. The action is human. Both are necessary. The Book of Tobit is, at its deepest level, a sustained meditation on divine providence, on how God works in the world, through what instruments, on what timeline, with what apparent concealment and what eventual revelation. God does not appear directly in the Book of Tobit. He does not speak from a burning bush or a whirlwind. He does not send a vision or a dream or a prophet with a direct message. He acts entirely through secondary causes, through a fish in a river, through a distant relative, through a demon's pattern of behavior that inadvertently routes the right man to the right woman, through an angel in disguise. And the characters, through most of the story, do not know what is happening. Tobit does not know that his prayer is being answered. Sarah does not know that the young man traveling toward Ecbatana is the answer to her prayer. Tobias does not know that his traveling companion is an archangel. Raguel does not know that the grave he digs will remain empty. They are living inside the story. And the story, from inside, looks like a series of misfortunes, coincidences, and ordinary human decisions. Only at the end, when Raphael reveals himself, does the whole picture come into view. But what no one knew was how completely this structure of providence mirrors the experience of every believer in every generation. You are inside the story. You cannot see the whole picture. The fish that leaped at Tobias's feet looked like a random attack. It was actually a divine provision. The journey that Tobias undertook to collect his father's money looked like an ordinary errand. It was actually the ordained path to his wife. Romans 8:28. All things work together for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. Not some things, all things, even the fish, even the demon's attacks, even the 7 failed marriages that positioned Sarah perfectly. For the 8th, the right one, the ordained one, the one that was always going to happen. The God of Tobit is the God of Romans 8:28, working all things together, simultaneously, in multiple cities, through multiple instruments, for purposes that will not be fully visible until the moment of revelation, after the healing of Tobit's eyes, after the return of Tobias with his wife, after the revelation of Raphael, after the family is reunited and the money recovered. Tobit sings. Tobit 13, one of the most beautiful and most prophetically charged poems in all of the deuterocanonical literature. Tobit, the blind man who can now see, the exiled man who is still in Nineveh, sings about Jerusalem. Not the Jerusalem he is living in, not the Jerusalem of his present experience, the Jerusalem that is coming. Tobit 13:9-16. O Jerusalem, the holy city, he will afflict you for the deeds of your children, but again he will show mercy to the children of the righteous. For Jerusalem will be built as his house for all ages. How happy I will be if a remnant of my descendants should survive to see your glory and acknowledge the King of heaven. A bright light will shine to all the ends of the earth. Many nations will come to you from far away. The inhabitants of the far reaches of the earth will come to your holy name, attracted by gifts for the King of Heaven. A bright light to all the ends of the earth. Many nations coming from far away. The holy name attracting the inhabitants of the far reaches. This is Isaiah 60. This is Zechariah 8. This is Revelation 21. The blind man who has been healed sings about the ultimate healing. The exile who has recovered his family sings about the ultimate recovery. The man who has seen God work through ordinary means sings about the extraordinary final act. But what no one knew was the specific urgency of Tobit's prophetic song for the generation we are living in. He is singing from exile, from Nineveh, the capital of the empire that destroyed his homeland. He cannot go to Jerusalem. He may never go to Jerusalem. But he sings about its coming glory as if he can see it. Faith in the coming Jerusalem, from inside the present Nineveh. This is what faithful exile looks like. Not despair at the present condition, not forgetting the city that is coming, but singing about it from inside the darkness, because the dawn is certain, even when the darkness is still complete. The Book of Tobit has been hidden from the Protestant Church for 500 years, hidden not maliciously, but effectively, by a canonical decision that, whatever its merits, removed from Protestant Christians access to one of the most practically useful texts for spiritual warfare and marriage theology in all of ancient literature. And the 21st century church needs this text urgently, not because it is scripture in the canonical sense, but because it carries ancient wisdom about two of the most urgent spiritual battles of the present age: marriage, the demon. Asmodeus is still targeting marriages, not with the same dramatic mechanism, not literally killing husbands on wedding nights, but with the same strategic goal: the corruption of the covenant relationship between husband and wife, the erosion of the sacred character of marriage through pornography, through unfaithfulness, through the casual normalizing of divorce, through the culture of consumption that has turned even marriage into a transaction to be abandoned when it no longer meets the consumer's preferences. And the provision, the fish that God prepared before the battle began, is still available. The weapon is still there: prayer, consecration, entering marriage with sincerity rather than lust, building the marriage on the God who ordained it before the world was made. But what no one knew was the most urgent application of the Tobit narrative to the specific moment we are living in. We are living in the days of the diaspora, of exile from the culture that once shaped itself around biblical values, of Nineveh, the empire that has conquered the homeland. And the calling of the diaspora, as Tobit's life demonstrates, is not to assimilate, not to abandon the distinctive practices of faith, the burial of the dead, the dietary laws, the prayers 3 times a day, not to forget Jerusalem while living in Nineveh, but to maintain, to bury the dead of the community, to pray even when the empire forbids it, to be the person who does what is right even when what is right costs everything, and to trust, with the unshakable confidence of Tobit's final song, that the Jerusalem that is coming is more real than the Nineveh that is present. We have traveled from Nineveh to Ecbatana, from a blind man praying for death to a demon binding husbands in their beds, from a fish leaping in the Tigris to an archangel unmasking himself in a courtyard, from Raphael digging a grave at dawn to finding his daughter alive at sunrise. And now, the most urgent question the Book of Tobit asks: do you trust the God who works in the ordinary? Not the God of dramatic intervention, the burning bush, the parting sea, the fire from heaven. But the God who places a fish in the right river on the right day, who arranges a route so that a young man arrives at the right city, who sends an angel in human disguise to walk with you through the danger you don't yet know is ahead. The God of Tobit is the God of Romans 8:28, of Proverbs 3:5-6. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. Of Psalm 23, he leads me in right paths. The God who works through the ordinary, through companions who turn out to be more than they appear, through fish that leap at the right moment, through prayers prayed in two cities simultaneously. But what no one knew was the most personally urgent question the Book of Tobit asks. Not, do you believe in angels? Not, do you believe in spiritual warfare? Those are theological questions with theological answers. The question Tobit asks is simpler and harder. Do you pray before the battle, as Tobias prayed before the wedding night? Do you enter the most vulnerable moments of your life, the moments of intimacy, of covenant, of irreversible commitment, with prayer and consecration? Or do you enter them with the same casual confidence of the 7 husbands who did not survive the night? The fish gall was in Tobias's hands before he needed it. The prayer was on his lips before the demon was driven out. The angel was beside him before the danger appeared. God's provision is always ahead of the battle. The question is whether you will use it, whether you will burn the fish heart, whether you will pray before you enter, whether you will consecrate the most vulnerable places of your life to the God who ordained those places before the world was made. The demon is still targeting what God ordained. The angel is still accompanying the journey you don't know you're on. The fish is still in the river. The question is whether you will catch it, and what you will do with it when you do. A blind man prayed for death. A young woman prayed in despair. 2 prayers in 2 cities at the same moment. And God, without telling either of them what he was doing, sent one angel to answer both. Before they knew the answer was coming, before they could see the provision, before the fish leaped, before the route was chosen, before the disguised archangel sat down with a young man who needed a traveling companion. God was already working. This is the God of Tobit, the God who hears prayers prayed in Nineveh and Ecbatana simultaneously and sends one response to both. The God who places weapons in rivers before the battle begins. The God who ordains marriages before the world was made, and then sends an archangel to bind the demon that spent 7 marriages trying to prevent it. The demon tried 7 times. He failed 7 times. Not because the humans were strong enough to stop him, they were not, but because God was not going to let him win. Sarah was set apart for Tobias before the world was made. The ordination preceded the opposition. The covenant was stronger than the demon, and when the 8th man arrived, with the right weapon and the right prayer and the right angel beside him, the demon fled to Egypt and stayed there. Whatever the enemy is trying to prevent in your life, whatever he has blocked 7 times or 17 times or 70 times, he is fighting against something that was ordained before the world was made. He is opposing a purpose that was established before his opposition began. He cannot win. He can delay. He can attack. He can try to make you give up before the 8th attempt. But he cannot change what was written in the heavenly tablets before the world was made. Catch the fish, burn the heart, pray before the battle, and trust the God whose angel is beside you on the road you do not yet know is dangerous. Subscribe to Journey Bible Stories right now. Every week, the hidden things, the ancient stories, and the God who answers prayers prayed in 2 cities at the same moment. Drop one word in the comments. What did the Book of Tobit reveal to you? Share this with someone whose marriage is under attack. Someone who has buried 7 dreams and is afraid to believe in an 8th. Someone who needs to know that the God who sent Raphael to Tobit is still sending angels, still answering prayers, still ordaining what the enemy is trying to prevent. Before the world was made. See you in the next one.